Okay.
Anybody else got anything for Fonda?
The only other item, Mr. Chairman, is that the soccer field, the newly formed soccer field here in Appalachia at DW, Mr. Jimmy Ricketts is calling. I think he called a couple of commissioners, and his concern is that it's gonna be too close to his house. And he felt like that myself could move it across the street, but I told him that would be something that had to come before the board.
Commissioners, we already got a FERDAP grant based on the plans we submitted as to where the soccer field was going to be. So that's not as easier said than done there is what we're talking about. I mean.
Where they put, I thought they were finding a new location.
We did, I'm
We
sorry.
did pinpoint another location that's out on the road adjacent to the baseball complex. It's not in the open area where we once was talking about doing that, and he wanted a vegetative buffer and all that between that and his house. The county owns 6 acres on Powell Rivers Road,
Yeah.
so there would be 400 yards or so many feet from Mr. Rickards' house. So it wouldn't be right in front of his house, it would be around on Powell Rivers Road. To me, we're trying to accommodate him as best we could.
Yeah, we,
If you move it across the street and your restrooms and all are over here at the baseball complex, all your little kids, parents
Running
and
back and
all,
forth.
running back and forth across Powell Rivers Road.
That's
trying-
a dangerous thing.
And I'm not in favor of doing that. I am in favor of moving it to the 6 acres that we found out that the county does own adjacent to Powell Rivers Road, thereby giving him 200 or 300 yards of vegetative buffer, which we'll just leave there and not clear, and try to accommodate him in that fashion. We could also, if we ever decide to put lights on it, we can put the lights where they're facing towards the road, rather than towards his house. I mean, I've tried to accommodate him, you know, all this is in my district, and I've tried to accommodate not only the people that want a soccer field, that we promised we would get one, but also accommodate the residents in that area. I feel like we've done the best job that we can do. Moving it across the road is just too much for liability to have kids running back and forth. And if you move it across the road, then you're going to try and build facilities over there, restrooms and everything else, to keep them kids from running back and forth across that road, or somebody's going to get run over, and I don't think that's the right thing for the county to do, is put them kids in harm's way. That's my opinion. I'm only one vote on this board, but unless you want to go over on the other side of the road and build all new facilities, when the facilities are already there, if we build it adjacent to the complex that's already there, we have facilities there, restrooms, concession stands, all this other stuff. If you move it to a whole nother area, then you got to reallocate some money to build all these facilities. I don't think we have the money, and I don't think that's the right thing to do. The parking area is right there for the baseball field. They could use the same parking area for the soccer field, because there are 2 different seasons. It makes no sense to me to move it across the street.
in addition, I have to check with Mark. I'm not sure if we change our plans or we submit it to FERDAP, if we still qualify for that money. So do we lose that money, have to resubmit an application over again? I don't know.
And the question, he's aware that we've moved the soccer field? and
I don't know what he's
provided
aware of. I
vegetarian-
haven't spoken to him.
Yes, I spoke with him, he's aware of it.
I
With
think we
vegetarian
did,
screening?
yes, and then we did this before we submitted to FERDAP, because this isn't the first go-around for this grant, so, you know. We tried our best.
We
based
submitted
on what
that
we
a
have.
couple of years that we didn't get funded for that.
Exactly, Commissioner, exactly. So I think we tried our best with what we have.
All right. That's it. I'll let him know.
All righty.
All right.
Thank you, Fonda.
All right.
Ms. Pam Brownell, Emergency Management.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I have 2 action items this morning. The first one being request of the board approval of signing of the CERT grant in the amount of $7,600. And I would like to thank our CERT team. This money is used for training and equipment for them. If it had not been for our CERT team coming into my EOC and working, it was wonderful to have that help. And Alan, also thank you for getting out and doing what you're supposed to do, standing up and checking your community and reporting back. That's what CERT's about. But as the commissioners that came in, most of those that you've seen in those little green shirts with the had a vest on, they were handing out sandbags, they were cooking for us. And that's what it's about, community emergency response teams.
You need a motion?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
The second item is discussion of quotes for the tower at the EOC. I don't know if everybody realized, but during the storm, Verizon went down over there at Alligator Point on the east side of the county, because when we had damage assessment teams out, we had no contact as far as cell with them. Our ham radio operator, these antennas and this tower being up and running is, we have to have it, because if we lose communication in this county, we can always reach out with this ham operator. As you can look at the pictures, the two antennas we have on the top, there's no way for us to get up there and even do maintenance on those, because the floor's gone. And if you look at the old air conditioning unit was left, and I'm not sure what was rattling on that tower during this storm, but at any minute I was expecting something to come off that tower and end up on our new roof, or worse, on someone else's roof. We only had one contractor that even remotely replied to my emails and my phone calls, and this is Chris Custom Welding. And what he's come out and looked at it and gave us a quote. I do think this is an emergency. We need to get this tower fixed and get our antennas operational, because the next storm could take out all communications, and all we'd have left would be our ham operator.
Anybody any questions?
We only get one bid. Is there
It's on the bid
some
we got.
motions?
It's the only bid we got put in for it.
Nobody would even, I called, I sent emails. Nobody even bothered to return my phone calls except for this guy. But that's up to the board, what y'all want to
Can
do.
we go with it, Michael, just one bid?
Well, I think what she's suggesting to you in her presentation is a declaration of an emergency so that you can address this with the bid that she's submitted to you. I think she's indicated that communications were down just recently in your last storm, so I think you have enough of a factual basis. If the board chooses to exercise your authority to declare a state of emergency, you can waive the bid requirements and accept this proposal.
Well, let me, Mr.
Go
Chair,
ahead.
let me ask a question, Michael. If we're already underneath the state of emergency, we're still operating underneath the state of emergency that was issued last week for this storm that we've just had pass by, can we do it up underneath that?
I would be more comfortable, Commissioner, if we would have a separate motion for this, because there are really two different issues. The declaration of emergency for the storm, although related to communications, this is a little bit different. And just to keep the record
Okay.
clean for auditing purposes, I would recommend a separate motion.
I know a lot of times we could do something underneath our state of emergency that we're already under, but
Yes,
you'd
ma'am.
rather this be separate.
I would make that recommendation,
Okay.
because this was damaged not during the storm, it was pre-existing damage.
I'll make that motion.
Have a motion? Second. Have a motion second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Where is the money coming from?
That was my next question.
Have you talked to the finance office, Pam, about it?
No, this was brought up to the board several weeks ago. So before I tell him to proceed, then we need to figure out where the money's coming from. Because I do not have it in my budget.
We'll have to check with finance and see.
If we don't have any other funding, then we have to take it out of reserve for contingency.
Yeah.
If there's a different source, I'd rather use that, but, because I'm very leery about spending that reserve. I mean, as the board knows, I've spoken many times about this, it's not a slush fund, but this is an emergency situation, and if that's the only resource that we have, then we'll take it out of reserve for contingencies, and that's my opinion.
I'll get with finance and report back to the board by the next meeting or by email before then.
No, we need to just go ahead and
Put that in the motion.
find the, we need to include that into the motion to find the money, and if not, find any other way to get it out of reserve for contingency. $12,331, wasn't it?
Yeah, we'll have to have
I
a-
would support
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
have to
Yeah.
amend the motion in a second.
Need to revote?
Commissioner Watson, are you going to amend your motion to
I
include
can
the
do
lake?
that.
Okay.
Can you amend
I'll
the
amend
second?
my motion to reflect that the funds will be identified. If not, we'll take it out of emergency.
All in favor?
I amend myself.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
And Commissioners, while we're talking about the state of emergency proclamation, it's, the board has given the chairman this authority to do storms, but I do need the proclamation to be ratified by the board, a vote on the state of emergency proclamation.
So move.
Second.
Have a motion second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
And in addition, I think Pam would like to extend it, and I want a separate motion. How many days? How much longer?
When you extend it, it extends for 7 days. This is good for
Okay,
7
that means
days, and when
it's
it ends, it goes for 7 more.
We need another 7-day extension on the state of emergency.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion second on the floor. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Is that all you have, Ms. Pam?
Well, we have L92 out there, so we'll be monitoring that. Of course, I think I voiced my opinion to y'all about the sandbag episode I put into the state for sandbags, and they told me I couldn't get them, so I had to order them from a vendor. Unfortunately, the vendor just shipping them today. They won't be here until probably Thursday. So I'm going to talk to the road department and find about inmates to try to get us some sandbags filled. I had 10,000 sandbags filled. We have about 200 left in that warehouse. We went through some sandbags because that next storm is coming. Plus, we're going to be looking at, like I told DOT, when we was out there with the government, everything that fell above us, that water's coming.
Is L92, is it coming the same track?
I do not know, sir. I just know that it's out there, and they are expecting it as she moves to start strengthening. I'm hoping not. I mean, I prayed, and I prayed hard, and I will say this, God did answer my prayer. We did not take a direct hit. It could have been worse than it was, and I thanked him this morning when I come over that bridge looking at that sun coming up. Thank you, Lord.
Well, that's what we were saying, counties to the east of us didn't suffer as well, as good as what we did, because you've got Dixie and Levy County. Dixie and Levy County has had a tremendous amount of rainfall. And talking to Commissioner Rooks out of Levy County, who represents the Cedar Key area, she said that they were predicting back on Thursday that they were going to meet the threshold of a 100-year storm, the equivalent of the flooding for a 100-year storm. And she said on Wednesday, down at Cedar Key, the only motel they have down there, the water was already in the parking lot. So they've been bombarded too. I'm very thankful that we got out with what we did. But my prayers are with the other people in the other counties because they didn't. You've still got people, a lot of people without power, a lot of people.
I'd also like to inform the board that as far as our 12.5% is concerned, we do get to count our volunteer hours. Again, I'd like to thank CERT. I'd like to thank the road department, Fonda, Sheriff's Office, but our ESF 18, which is manned by Beth Brinkley and Resort Vacation Rental Properties. Before the sun come up Friday morning, we had our trained damage assessment teams, which is mainly made up of them out working. We will be able to capture, because they paid their people, we will be able to go back and get with them and look at what they actually pay their people, and then we get credit for that. That's considered volunteer because the county wasn't paying them. Although Resort Vacation Rental Property paid them, we can count those monies towards meeting our 12.5%. And I'm going to tell you what, and the property appraiser's office. Rhonda was at Alligator Point herself. And when you go to Alligator Point and you look at houses and they're on stilts and you don't think they're damaged, trust me. She got out and inspected their pilings. There's a lot of pilings, people, that are actually broke or cracked. And the way you look at that, that's called destroyed. You can't fix that. You have to take that house down and reset pilings. So when you look at the numbers and people think, oh, it wasn't that bad out there, you got to take a close look at what actually really happened at Alligator Point.
One more thing real quick before Pam leaves, if I might, Mr. Chairman.
Sir.
Pam, I think you've done a good job, and I understand that you got some calls of different ones suggesting you need to do this and you need to do that. You know what to do with your job, and you work for this board. So you do your job, and if this board directs you to do something else, that's what you do, and the rest of that, you just do your job. You know what you need to do.
Yes, sir.
And not listen to outside influences trying to come in and tell you how to react to a storm. I think you've earned that right, and I just want to make that clear to you that you work for this board. You don't work for anybody else. Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate all of y'all.
While we're on the emergency situation, or just talking about that, I want Jared Wester to come up here. Jared, can you come up here for just a minute? He's the director of the ambulance service. I want to know, did you have any problems with communication throughout the county during the storm, or
No,
did it
ma'am.
run smooth?
No, man, we had a great response. Pam and I, we were in the EOC together a couple times checking in. We had a good plan on the ground. Emailed the plan over to you guys through Michael, so I think the plan was well executed. I can't thank EOC enough. I mean, the spearhead that came from there, the communication was definitely direct. It was from Pam's office, and I to them. They did a fantastic job.
But your radios and all that worked
Our stuff was
good?
great. We had no
Good.
issues. And for that matter, we really had not a lot going on medically throughout the whole storm. We did have, on the front end, we had some hospice patients that needed, a little extra care. We moved those folks to higher ground. Moved a couple people over, out of the area just to make sure they were okay, and then brought them back afterwards. Aside from that, it was great for us. Communication stayed good. Folks were, minded the curfews and stayed where they needed to be and stayed safe. And again, my hat's off to the EOC. They did a phenomenal job, and the communication was excellent too. And we were in good shape.
That's a community response.
No doubt.
It was all of us pulling together, even our community were calling and reporting things. Again, of course, we do rumor control. Things were getting out there that wasn't so, but, that always happens.
That
But
always
we
happens.
chased them down and we informed people that's not correct. This is what's really happening. But again, it was a community as a whole.
Absolutely.
That responded to this. Everybody in this community pulled together.
Yeah, all hands were on deck. You could see that, and it was great communication through the whole deal.
Not so much with the news. I got a bone to pick with Channel 13 with the little reporter that reported that Apalachicola was evacuating to higher ground. They neglected to say what portions. So I will be speaking to them, and of course the Weather Channel, when they scrolled across, Franklin County is evacuating, and my phone went crazy. But I had that stopped from the governor's office.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Pam. Eric Lovestrand?
Morning, Commissioners. I had just a couple of items in my report that I thought you might have some questions about, so I was going to mention those to you briefly. The first is that you had some questions in a meeting that I wasn't here for a couple of meetings back regarding the herbicide mix that was used and sprayed on the right-of-ways on the utility areas in the county. So I included in my report a little bit of written background information about the 3 different chemical products that were used there and the adjuvant that was mixed in with that mix as well. And I don't know if you've had a chance to look through any of those notes, but there's information there for you. And found out that FDAX actually does have a pesticide compliance section in the agency. And if you have further concerns, we can actually talk to those folks to find out if this looks like an appropriate mix and application procedures and things like that that were utilized. Basically, in my assessment, I'm not an expert chemist or anything, but from looking at the labels of the products that were in that mix and talking to some folks I know in the invasive species section at FWC, it looks like those chemicals are typical for a mixture like that to use on a utility right-of-way. Now, whether or not they were applied appropriately or at the appropriate rate, that's something that we just wouldn't have any knowledge of, The one that did have raised a little bit of caution flag for me was the adjuvant that was utilized in the mix. It's one that is not recommended for aquatic habitats. The other three chemicals, the actual active ingredients in those, are listed for use in situations like this. Two of them are actually listed for aquatic use, so they don't have long-term potential effects in any kind of aquatic system. But the adjuvant is one that specifically has some cautionary statements regarding getting it into aquatic habitats, and it can cause problems there. Now, their application wasn't intended for aquatic applications. It was upland-type applications, but they are spraying, or were spraying, wet ditch habitat probably along there, getting some of this stuff in areas where we do have water in ditches that goes out to our coastal areas. Whether or not any of that made it out there, who's to know, unless there's a lot of sampling that takes place. So you can look that over, get back with me if you have any further questions on that, and I can do some more digging if you need to.
Any questions?
Let me mention the other thing real quick, and that is the note in there about the university's decision to pull back from their attempts to try to find additional funding for this facility that DEP is in or owns down here at the Mill Pond. And the dean has made that decision that he's going to have to pull back from that project because they didn't have additional, whatever it was, $400,000 shortfall to cover that cost for that project. So right now, they're sitting on money from the legislature that came in with that appropriation that the county worked with us on last funding cycle, last year. And he's checking on possibilities for how that funding can be utilized still for Franklin County Extension. But I don't know a lot of answers right now. I just have a lot of questions, as you probably do.
Well,
Means you'll have to go back to the armory
Well,
if they
unless,
don't want to seek this out, seek funding out, because, right now, you're in the middle of a cycle, you're not going to get any funding right now from the state of Florida.
Pretty much, Commissioners, because we don't have any other locations that,
No.
that's appropriate for what is
We
offered.
we still have room for them over at the armory, don't we, on the
Yes,
outside?
Commissioner, we do.
front? Okay.
unless additional funding could be found somewhere, and the project actually reworked at a reduced scope of work, I think it could be done for a lot less money. The lab was the biggest portion of the cost in that project. I think $250,000 of that budget was tied up in what they were trying to do in the lab there. And when that piece of it kind of fell apart, the funding support at the university side just sort of fell apart for trying to pursue additional money to do this.
We got a new paved parking lot down there.
They're working on that. Yeah, they finished the culvert installation down there, and it's still, they've taken up the old asphalt, and it's still just dirt and shell in the parking lot area there in that road. But they're committed to pay for that out of that legislative funding that they received.
Well, I know this board advocated for y'all to be able to get the money.
Yes, ma'am.
To be able to do that. We talked to our legislative delegation and other ones and higher ups, and they were all very supportive of it. I hate that the university does not feel like they're going to be able to secure the extra funding that they need to be able to do this, but.
Yeah, it was a big bite to ask for when the contractor's price for what they had in the scope of work went up over $824,000. That was the total for the renovations for that project. And nobody in the groups at campus that were wanting to put funds into it had that much money sitting around, just like the county doesn't. I understand that. There would be potential for seeking outside funding or going back to the legislature to ask for additional funding for that project. But I'm just trying to let the dust settle and think about options right now.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
have to reroute. Yes, sir.
Is there a way to do less, to rework the scope where it would fit in the 400?
There is, but, well, in terms of the funding from the university side, I don't know. That would be a question to ask the dean about and find out if there is funding support there without the lab in that project. Just because the lab was the biggest piece of it. Some of it was related to university code requirements. If they're going to own a building They have specific things that are probably higher level in terms of code requirements that the county would not necessarily have per se in terms of renovating a facility like that. So the project cost just kept bumping up and up when they started looking at the things that needed to be done and the additional pieces of that project. But the lab was the biggest piece of it in terms of any, single aspect to that.
Where the lab at now?
Well, there's no lab in that building currently. DEP had a lab in there years ago, and then when they moved to East Point, they put their laboratory facility over there. So the room was there, but the university's lab requirements are incredibly expensive to do. That kind of construction is always expensive, and they were going to be required to put in a single-pass air system for the lab. If you're going to store chemicals in there, you have to have that kind of setup. So it added a big piece regarding the HVAC system to that project. That was a major addition. And then when you talk about outfitting a laboratory with the equipment that they use and just the casework and cabinetry that goes into something like that, it's high dollar stuff compared to normal use facilities.
Well, can't they get it started without the lab and put the lab in down the road?
That's a possibility, but at this point, message I got from the dean's office last week, it was Thursday, I think, he was going to pull the plug basically and pull back on trying to find additional funding. I don't think they were interested in finding the additional funding without the lab, honestly. I think that was a big part of the senior vice president's support for the project and him wanting to move forward with that. So I'll be happy to talk to any of you commissioners individually to try to provide information, or if you have questions that you want me to ask, I'll be happy to do that. I wish it had gone different, honestly do.
Yep.
I would like to get the project in the money that was allocated. And if it means decreasing the scope of work, can we go back to the dean? Or has that conversation already occurred?
No.
Let's
This board has that opportunity to go back and talk to the dean, find out
Let's do that, and
if there are
I agree,
options.
maybe do a lab later if they want a lab.
Now, the money allocated was $250,000 from the legislature. So if that's all that's there, that's not enough to do that project, in my mind. It would need some additional funding support from the university somewhere.
Even without the lab?
I think so. I think so, just with the extensive work that needs to be done there.
Well, they want to be here, they got to put something in it.
Yes.
I mean,
Well,
you-
traditionally, the counties are the ones that provide the extension facility, and the dean is not used to the model of actually paying for a building for an extension office. Now, the lab was the piece of that kind of pushed it over the edge where they thought this would be an investment that would be good for the county, good for their resources to be able to do research there. But that's a question to ask, honestly. If we
Well-
can pull together some funding on their side, if we can continue and find a cheaper scope of work for that project.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
ma'am.
It sort of reminds me of when the library got the state aid, or not state aid, but a grant to have another person, the ability to have another person. And the director of the library came before us and they said, we got this money to hire this other person. Well, the board sat here and we said, oh, that's good, but we want you to know, if something happens and you don't get that money again, I'm going to
Recurring
and you were here, I
funds.
think, back then
Right.
too, that, it's on y'all. I mean, because the county does not have resources like that. If you sat here this morning, we don't have hardly resources to pick up the debris that's on the side of the road now. But anyway, that's the way I would look. What I would look for at the extension office and at the University of Florida is to see if they can ask for an extension of the money to where they would not lose the money and possibly get some more funding through the legislature this next session, or either do the $250,000 worth what was proposed in the plan originally, and then do it in phases. Don't let and I'm saying this to the University of Florida, don't let the funding issue keep you from having a facility that's gonna benefit the people and some needs that they have in this county. So, I mean, that's the way I would do it.
It's gonna be hard to get the money back.
It's gonna be hard if we sit here and allow the University of Florida to give up that money, that $250,000, they're not gonna ever get nothing again. Because
Let's not give up.
that's what I'm saying. I wouldn't give it up. I'd either ask for an extension or do what I could do within there. And I'm gonna put that in form of a motion that we write the dean at the university. And if this board agrees with what I've said, maybe echo that to the dean. You know, say that this time, Franklin County is not able to put money in there, we're not going to. We paid the parking lot. I mean, that's what
I'll
our
second that
agreement was.
motion if you want to put it in
Yeah.
motion.
And, so anyway, I put it in form of a motion to contact the dean and ask him, or suggest those two, scenarios to him and see what he says, and let him know that we understand the viability of this facility and we understand the importance to our local economy, and that we hope that they would consider that also.
Second.
All right, I have a motion second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Real quick, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
on
sir.
this, on this one issue that we just voted on. The legislature comes into session early this year,
Yes,
No,
sir.
it's March.
March. Maybe we need to go back and ask for another appropriation to finish the project out. What I'm understanding that you're saying the University of Florida doesn't want to put a bunch of money into it if they're not going to get a lab.
I think that
They
was
feel
part
like
of the
the county
decision.
is responsible for having a facility for extension in the county. As you previously stated, that's what most counties do. Then we need to hammer down an exact GMP on this project and then go back and ask for another allocation. In the meantime, you still have the funds that were allocated last year.
Correct.
And let them know that we got this much money and we need this much more to complete the facility, complete with a lab where they can do studies on Apalachicola Bay and put together a good project and put that to our local legislative delegation and move it forward. As I understand, they funded some facilities last year through the legislature at over $1 million. That's not what we asked for because of what we thought the
What the projected
GMP
budget was,
previously
right.
was for the building. So, you need to talk to the dean and see if we don't need to go back and ask for another allocation of additional monies to finish the project out and not just throw the towel in.
That's right.
This county doesn't have $1 million to build an extension facility.
Yes, sir.
We do have the ability to approach the state and see if we can get a grant to help move forward with the monies that we already have in hand that they allocated last year and put it all together and come up with a good project. That's 6 months from now.
Yeah, when we
7 months
submitted
from
last
now.
time for that, deadline was October 1, I believe, for the legislative request. I'm assuming it's the same, but I'm not
It'll
sure.
probably be a little bit later because the session starts later.
Okay.
Well, we're not there either. So what we're
It's-
telling you through the vote of the board here, that you need to go back to the dean, let's draw up another plan and then move forward accordingly. And if we need to go back and ask for additional dollars, and listening to the board, it sounds like the board would support that in order to make this project move forward. As far as the county going and taking over possession of this building, I don't think that's a good idea. I think, we need to move forward with the plan that we had. And ask him, is he still willing to put money into the lab? It sounds like the lab is the most important thing to the university at this time. Are they talking about pulling all the funding that they had previously allocated, or, we need some more information here after your discussion with the dean and see how we move forward. And you could bring us that
Okay.
report at the next board, and then we can decide if we want to make a request and for how much. You got 2 weeks to try to get this together to the next board meeting, that we can still meet. If there is an October 1 deadline, we can meet that deadline.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can check with the lobbyists at the University of Florida too, see what their deadlines are.
One more thing, see, Mr. Eric, what we do around here, we go through phases on a whole lot of things, like the parks and stuff. You see what we have to be a part of it, and we wait till the next year.
The
Just like we saying, the Armory.
Armory's a prime example.
Multi-year
Prime example,
projects,
you know.
yeah.
We don't have the money to just, hey, do it at one time, so we have to do it in phases, and
Mhm.
we have to wait till they send, you know, they got all the power in their hand.
Yes, sir.
So when they send it down, we spend that, wait till the next year.
And
Oh.
they've done that with extension offices in the past too, from legislative appropriations, actually gotten, you know, a piece of it one year, another piece another year, and sometimes 3 years even to get
Yeah.
the funding all together that they needed to actually start construction on some of the bigger projects.
But I don't see why they shouldn't, since this building already there, I don't see why they shouldn't go ahead and use what they got, that'll be saving, if they want to save the building.
I know DEP is very interested in somebody getting into that building and taking care of it, because it's still under their management with the State Board of Trustees. Right now, the university has a sublease with them for that. I need to look at the language in that and see what timeframes they have on that sublease. But I appreciate everybody's concern
All right.
and assistance.
Free to get you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, appreciate it.
We'll take a 5-minute recess.